I'd like to welcome everybody to today's presentation of Integrated Behavioral Health. I am your host, Dr. Elise Snipes. Today we are talking about healthy eating on a budget. And a couple of you had actually asked for this presentation to be done because your clients or people you know, or maybe even you, may have difficulty figuring out, how do I eat healthfully on a budget, because some of those healthy foods seem like that they are super expensive. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Why should we consider cooking? Well, even cheap fast food is likely going to cost between $2 if you get two of the single hamburgers off the dollar menu at McDonald's, or about $8 if you go to Subway per person. That's a lot of money if you're not making a lot of money. If you make $7.50 an hour and you have to spend more than that to eat your lunch, that's going to cut in quite significantly to what you're able to bring home. You can easily eat for less than $1 per person per meal with some simple pre-planning and preparation. A lot of P's there. When you cook at home, you can eat cheaper and have healthier options. And when you prepare ahead, you don't have to work as hard during the week. So there are a lot of things that you can pre-cook as individual items, like you can pre-cook the brown rice, you can pre-cook the beans and the lentils or whatever, and have those ready, and then you can mix them in different ways throughout the week. So let's talk about some of this. Well, first, obviously, we always start out with, why is it beneficial to mental health? Why is it beneficial to behavioral health? Well, when we eat a healthy diet, when our nutrition is good, we're supplying our body factory with the raw materials it needs to make the tissues to repair, to make the neurotransmitters and the hormones to help us feel happy, to keep our blood pressure regulated, to regulate all of our fluids and everything else. We need nutrition in order to function. There are certain things that our body can make by breaking down its own muscle or creating it from fat or whatever we have in our body. But there are certain things that our body just can't make on its own, which is why good nutrition is really essential. When we eat well, when we eat healthfully, we tend to have more energy. We tend to have a healthier immune system. And when we are making good food choices that are not inflammatory, we can actually reduce inflammation. All of that contributes to helping us have a better mood, helping us have a better outlook. When we are not in pain and sick and inflamed and all that stuff, our HPA axis isn't pre-activated. We're not already kind of wound up, kind of tense. So we have more resources. We have more energy to deal with life on life's terms. Cognitively, when we have good food, we have enough food, then we are able to think more clearly. When you are even 1% dehydrated, it starts to have negative impacts on your cognitive abilities. And when you're 1% dehydrated, you're not even feeling thirsty yet. So hydration is really important, and water you can get just about anywhere. Also, when you are not eating a healthy diet, your brain may have difficulty doing the things it needs to do because that HPA axis is activated and it's focused on trying to get the raw materials it needs to help you prepare to fight or flee. And finally, the brain is one of the biggest users of glucose. So if you are not getting enough food, if you don't have enough stored glucose in your system, now I'm not saying go out and start eating sugar. No, that's not what I'm saying. But your body naturally stores energy. And if you don't have enough energy stores, it can be harder to think clearly. Now, nutrition doesn't really affect our environment that much, except to the extent that when you're cooking, it tends to smell good. But interpersonally, when we cook, a lot of times we are cooking with love. A lot of times when we cook for other people. Now, if you are single, Cooking can seem sort of overwhelming because you're like, well, I'm eating all by myself. And that's why it's helpful sometimes to plan on Sunday, for example, to do meal prep for the week. That way you can just take little dips out of your different foods that are available, and you don't feel like you're dirtying the whole kitchen just for you. I talk a lot about eating colorfully, and it's important to try to have 3 colors on your plate at every meal. This really helps increase your antioxidant levels. It helps increase your the variety of nutrients that you're eating. So think about this when you are putting together a plate. Sometimes it's hard to think, what color could I put on my plate, especially at breakfast? You may be thinking, how can I get green in at breakfast? Because I really don't want to eat spinach at breakfast. Although spinach in your omelet or on your egg sandwich can be really good. I digress. Reds. Think about apples, tomatoes, watermelon, grapes, onions, red onions, obviously, and red cabbage. Blues and blacks. Berries are your primary source of blues and blacks. Eggplant is purple, so that kind of falls into this blue-black area. There are just a lot of blue and black vegetables out there. Now, you can do black beans. You can do black rice. So you can get black into your meal rotation. Greens. Now, people typically think of broccoli and lettuce and spinach when they think of greens, but there's also kale, cabbage, peas. Most people will eat peas. Heck, my cat even eats peas. Green apples, celery, grapes, and zucchini. Oranges, squash, cantaloupe, sweet potatoes, carrots, and I know there are plenty of other oranges out there. I was just kind of giving you a range of different things you could have. And then whites are your onions, your white potatoes, and your garlic, for example. The things that I have in bold are things, and I should have done the red grapes and watermelon and even apples, are foods that you can have at breakfast. It's not weird to have that food at breakfast. And you may be like, well, Doc, you have zucchini bolded. Yes, I do. When I was young, when I was very little, we went through a period where we were kind of struggling financially. And I learned a whole bunch of different ways to have zucchini. Zucchini burgers, zucchini pancakes, zucchini bread, which is where we go with breakfast. Zucchini bread and zucchini pancakes can be actually pretty yummy, and that gets some green into your diet at that point. General tips. Buy in bulk when possible. A lot of times when you buy in bulk, you can save up to 50%, and that's awesome. And I say when possible because not everybody has the $30 to spend on a 50-pound bag of black beans or something. If it's more than you can eat, think about pairing up with people. So maybe you order a 50-pound bag, but then you divide it up between 5 other people. So that's possible. You can also buy in what I call mini bulk at certain stores, especially like Walmart. You can get a 20-pound bag of rice or a 20-pound bag of black beans. Honeyville and Augason Farms are 2 places where you can order, my experience has been relatively affordably, bulk foods like bulk lentils, bulk black beans, even bulk flour. You can also go to somewhere like Sam's or Costco. Nuts.com is another place where you can find bulk foods, and it's important to compare with Honeyville, Augason Farms, Nuts.com, and even Starwest-Botanicals. You want to compare the prices between those places and then your local places that you shop, like Walmart or your grocery store, to make sure that it really is less expensive to buy it offline. Buy generic. A lot of times generic is just as good nutritionally as the name brand. It may not taste quite as good, like generic Cheerios may not taste quite as good to you as name brand Cheerios. Play around with it. Different generics taste a little bit different, and you may find some generics that you like. Grow your own. And this is something that can be super helpful because vegetables can get to be kind of expensive, and so can fruits. The Kratky method is one method for gardening, and I have it right here. You can't see much here, but if you go online, go on YouTube and type in Kratky method, Kratky, and it is a simple method of hydroponics. It doesn't require bubblers. It doesn't require, really, if you've got sunlight already coming in through a window or you do it outside, it doesn't even require any electricity. So that can be really awesome for people who are living in an apartment or in a condo where they've got a balcony, but they don't want to have all these different pumps, and hydroponics can look kind of overwhelming if you start looking into it, which is why the Kratky method can be super awesome. With the Kratky method, basically you can take a plastic tub or empty kitty litter bucket, you fill it with water. You put a piece of board or styrofoam on top so it's not touching the water. You cut a hole in it, you put your plant in there, and you leave it. And that's all you do. It grows, and the roots grow down into the water, and they absorb the water. It's a really cool system when you start to look at it. And you can grow most of your greens, spinach, kale. I've done broccoli. You want to get the compact broccoli if you're going to do it with Kratky method. If you don't have natural sunlight that can support it, then you can get LED lights that are relatively affordable. Let's see, I don't have these still up here, but you can they look like fluorescent bulb tubes, but they're actually LEDs, and you can get those and install them in basically shop lights in order to grow your stuff inside and have the lighting without having to break the bank. If you start looking at indoor grow lights, you'll get sticker shock. I know I did. I think our setup that we've got, each one of our indoor lights, which is like a work light. It has four bulbs in it, just like you would use in a shop. You can get it at Walmart, or not Walmart, but Home Depot, and put those lights in it. I think each one ended up running probably about $80 by the time we were finished, but they last years and years and years. So yes, if you're going to use LED lights, it is something of an upfront cost, but it can be awesome. And the LED lights are that bright light that we talk about a lot of times for light therapy. So if you have your Kratky method plants maybe around the perimeter of your office space or your kitchen or your breakfast room, wherever you spend time, then you're going to get the double benefit of having that bright light to help set your circadian rhythms, as well as growing plants naturally. If you're going to grow on a patio or in a small space, you want to get something called determinate tomatoes. There are two different types. One's indeterminate, and those are the ones that grow and grow and grow and can kind of take over, whatever space they're in, because they just keep extending. Determinate tomatoes grow to a certain height, and that's it. So you want to look for determinate tomatoes. It's easy to go online and search for best vegetables for container gardening. That's the phrase that you'll use. And you can identify a lot of vegetables and fruits that are super ideal. Actually, I think I still have one of them open. Isn't that cute? This little container tomato plant. So you can have tomatoes right on your balcony. And let's see, do they have anything else besides tomatoes on this one? Ooh, the little tumbling yellow toms are super good too, but I'm making myself hungry. Anyhow, you can also look for bush sweet potatoes. You can order the sweet potatoes slips, is what they're called, from any retailer, and grow those. The bush type aren't nearly as rangy as the regular type. The interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize is that sweet potatoes are a totally different plant than white potatoes. White potatoes, the green part, is toxic because it's part of the nightshade family. Sweet potatoes aren't. Sweet potato leaves are actually delicious. And even the tips of the sweet potato, before it starts to get real fibrous, they are like super sweet. The flowers of the sweet potato plant are also edible. Remember, sweet potatoes grow underground. They grow from the roots. So it doesn't harm your harvest if you eat some of the greens. You don't want to eat too many, or eat the flowers. Doesn't bother your potato plant at all. Now, if you eat too much of the greens and you kind of do like my donkey does and eat it down to nothing, then the plant can't go through photosynthesis to make those nice big potatoes that you want. But I digress. Bush sweet potatoes. They also have all of those hanging planters, and you can even make hanging planters for strawberries and tomatoes. Some people have had really good luck with hanging planters for tomatoes. Go online, go to YouTube, look for DIY methods of creating your own hanging planters. There are a lot of different ways to do this without having to spend $20 a planter to get the pre-made ones. Just requires a little bit of ingenuity. And if you've got extra money laying around, tabletop hydroponics are possible. And the tabletop hydroponics are the ones, they have the built-in light and the built-in little systems, bubble systems and everything. And you can have them on your counter in your kitchen. Now, they don't give you a lot of space. So don't think you're going to be able to make a chef salad for a family of 4 every week in a tabletop hydroponics setup. If you have a lot of people in your family, or if you really like greens, you really want to look at that Kratky method. Look for buy one, get one free. We have a store here in the South called Publix, and every week they have a whole set of BOGOs that you can stock up on to get things more affordably. For your fresh fruits and vegetables, try to buy them in season. Obviously, if you're trying to buy blueberries in the middle of winter, they're going to be a lot more expensive because they've got to be shipped in from a warm climate. Pay attention to your portion sizes. Americans tend to eat too much. Remember that your stomach is only, when it's not distended, is only as big as your fist. So having a plate that's this big and piled this high, that's really stretching that stomach out. Do you need all of those calories at that sitting? We also, as Americans, tend to eat too much protein. Now, if you are working out or, growing, you may need a little bit more protein. And it's important to talk to your physician or nutritionist, or go online and find out what the recommendations are. But generally, 0.6 grams to 1 gram per pound of body weight is all you need. So when you're eating an 8-ounce piece of meat at lunch, and then you're eating another 8-ounce piece of meat at dinner, plus you've got dairy and other things in there, you're probably getting way more protein than you need. My point being, meat is one of the most expensive parts of our diet. And you probably don't need as much meat as you're getting. I know if you're a carnivore, you love meat. So don't get me wrong. I understand that concept. But if you're trying to eat on a budget, that may be one of those things that you have to really have small portions and savor instead of going all in. Make lots of casseroles. Shepherd's pie, salmon pie, pot pie, chicken and rice, chicken and dumplings. With chicken and rice and chicken and dumplings, you just throw some vegetables in there too, either peas or broccoli. Three bean salad with broccoli and green beans if you want something that's cold. Chili and nachos or burritos. All of those things can be made relatively inexpensively. My grandmother used to make salmon pie, and I'm sure you can Google it to find the recipe for it. But, my mother's side of the family was very poor when they were growing up. They were very hardworking people, but they didn't have a lot of education, so they really struggled. And my grandmother used to make salmon pie, a pie crust, salmon, and mashed potatoes. Mix it all together, put it in the pie crust, and bake it. It may sound gross, but it's actually one of my favorite foods even today. Use extenders when possible, such as brown rice, oats, or potatoes. Anything you can put in there to stretch it out. If you're making beef stew, for example, putting in rice or beans or both in order to give it more body, in order to give it more oomph, can be helpful. Cook the individual ingredients except for the vegetables ahead so you can combine during the week. Even with a pressure cooker, it takes about an hour to cook beans from dry to going. And that's the other thing. When we talk about beans and lentils, but especially beans, getting the dry beans as opposed to canned beans is, number one, a lot healthier, but number two, a whole lot cheaper. And even number three, it's a whole lot better on the environment because you're not using all of those cans. Really consider saving up if you can't afford one right now, and getting an inexpensive pressure cooker. They're like, you can get an inexpensive one for like $69 now. And it is a lifesaver. I use ours all the time. But if you cook your rice and your beans and that stuff ahead of time, then during the week when you come home and you're famished and you want dinner, you don't have to, spend a lot of time cooking. You don't have to dirty up a lot of dishes. You can just start putting things together. So let's talk about some basic foods here. Grains. What are your affordable grains? Well, pasta can be affordable. Again, you want to look for generic. I can still find pasta if I look carefully, especially in bigger quantities like 5-pound boxes. I can still find it for about 60 cents a pound. And that's really what I shoot for. Now, pasta, I have a little asterisk by it because it is your regular white pasta, tends to be a high glycemic index food. So it's one you're going to want to ideally combine with things that have fiber, protein, and fats in order to slow down your body's release of glucose. Brown rice is another great one. Brown rice has more fiber in it. It has a lot of your B vitamins in it that are necessary for those chemical processes that break the food down in order to make the neurotransmitters and the hormones. Brown rice is a great staple food. Oats can be helpful. Wheat berries. I love wheat berries, and you can get them from like Honeyville or Augason Farms in bulk. I use them at our house. Obviously, we don't have anybody with celiac disease or who is gluten sensitive, but I use wheat berries instead of oats. I cook them and we eat them just like oatmeal. Bread. Now, bread, if you get your whole wheat bread, can be a little bit pricey. Try to find a less expensive place to get it. If you live in a town where they have one of the day-old bread stores, that is a great place to get bread. Most of us aren't sensitive enough to bread to notice when it's day-old. And at least in our house, we go through a lot of bread. You can also bake your own flatbreads at home. Now, I've I can bake bread in, the little bread loaves and everything, but I am never able to successfully, even with a guide, cut my bread thin enough where we actually get a lot of sandwiches out of it. So what I do instead is I make flatbreads. So we have open face sandwiches instead of trying to cut the bread thin enough where we can do anything with it. You can also make your own bread at home and then cut it thickly. And with the addition of a little bit of milk and a couple of eggs, you can make French toast. So you've got some protein, you've got some fat, and you've got your grains. Air popped popcorn is another great snack food that can be, pretty affordable, especially when you compare it to potato chips. And you can put different seasonings on it. You can melt butter on it, whatever you want to do. I know most people don't like just plain old air popped popcorn, but it can be a really affordable snack for a lot of people to have. Now, one thing people say is, well, I don't want GMO, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no problem. Popcorn is not GMO. They have, at least at this point now, it may become GMO at a certain point in time, but you can look online and learn that popcorn is actually different. It's not the same thing as the kernel corn that you get in the freezer section or that you get in the produce section. So interesting little thing there. In terms of dairy, look for the best place to get your milk and your yogurt and your ice cream and those things. Be judicious with your use of milk. I mean, a lot of people, especially growing people, it's recommended that they do have dairy, but pay attention to how much you're drinking and using. If you buy cheese, buy it in bulk or on BOGO. A lot of times, again, Publix, I don't know what your stores are, whether you've got Food Lion or Wegmans or whatever it is in your place. But like the sliced cheeses will go on sale on BOGO, and we will stock up on those at that point in order to save a little bit of money. In terms of proteins, lentils and beans are very, very, very affordable sources of protein as well as fiber and a whole lot of nutrients in there. Lentil loaf, we are vegetarian at my house, so we don't eat meat. I make meatloaf with lentils. I make a lentil loaf, and you can go online. There are lots of different recipes out there. My challenge or my frustration with a lot of recipes is they call for some really weird stuff. And, some of them call for walnuts, and walnuts are really expensive. Your base lentil loaf, you combine about 8 cups of cooked lentils. I use 4 eggs just because we have our own chickens, so eggs aren't a big deal for us. 8 cups of cooked lentils, 4 eggs, oats. I never measure. I just stir them in there till it starts to get thickened. 8-ounce can of tomato paste, beef bouillon and seasoning to taste, and I bake at 350 until firm. Now, I do have some liquid smoke that I'll sometimes put in there just because my husband likes that a little bit more. So you can do a lot of things with seasoning, but this is a very simple recipe, and you've got the tomatoes in there, so you're getting lycopene, you're getting a fruit. You've also got the lentils, which serve as your fiber as well as your protein. So there is a lot to it, and then you can combine this lentil loaf. You can crumble it up and put it in spaghetti to give spaghetti more oomph to it. There are a lot of things that you can do with it. With beans, there are a lot of different kinds of beans, and it's interesting to note that, remember, different colors. When I make beans, I typically combine half black beans and half pinto beans. So I'm getting the bonus of both of them. Pintos are your red kind of speckled beans, and black beans are obviously black. Kidney beans are really yummy. They're really awesome, but they are a lot more expensive than black or pinto beans. So I may sprinkle some of those in just to add color and a few more nutrients, but I don't go hog wild on the kidney beans. Same thing with garbanzo beans. They can be more pricey. They're a little bit higher in protein. You just have to figure out where you want to give a little bit and where you want to take a little bit. Like I said, it is way healthier and way cheaper and way better on the environment to make your beans in a pressure cooker. I like, with both my lentils and my beans, I soak them, I sprout them, and then I cook them. But still, even at that, beans, if you cook them on a stovetop, will require a couple of hours to cook. Whereas with a pressure cooker, I put it on 35 minutes of pressure. And so by the time it heats up, does its 35 minutes, and is ready to have the pressure let off, it's usually about an hour. Chia seeds are an excellent vegetarian, vegan form of complete protein. And if you watch the video on nutrition, I talk a lot about the difference between complete and incomplete proteins. Chia seeds can be a little bit pricey, but they are a great source of omega-3s, a wonderful source of fiber, and a good source of protein. Eggs, if you can raise chickens, obviously that can be really awesome because then the eggs tend to be less expensive. But eggs are a good source of protein that tend to be a little bit cheaper than meat itself. Meat goes a long way. You typically only need about 3 ounces of meat at a sitting to have an average portion size. If you want to extend it, you can either have your little hunk of meat over here and savor it, or you can add it to things like I was talking about earlier with chicken and rice, or salmon pie, or shepherd's pie, in order to really savor the meat and the meat taste. If you're talking about fish, you can go with the cheaper version, which is mackerel over salmon. Both of them are high in omega-3s, but mackerel tends to be a lot cheaper. So if you're really looking for affordability, you'll probably want to look that way. In terms of veggies and fruits, tomato paste and pasta sauce are great places where you can get tomatoes that are, any time of year, not just in season, and so they can be less expensive. Frozen fruits and vegetables also tend to have a pretty stable price no matter what time of year you're at. And your frozen fruits, like even your frozen blueberries and things, tend to have a more stable price. Around here, I think frozen blueberries are about 15 cents per ounce. Now, that's not super cheap, but it's not super expensive either. It's still cheaper than fresh right now. Opt for your cheaper vegetables instead of going with your, super fancy broccoli florets. Go with broccoli cuts. Go with green beans. Those tend to be a lot cheaper than some other things. Look for dried fruits like dried cranberries, dried raisins, those sorts of things. Those have a long shelf life, so they are, available. You can buy them in bulk from Costco or Sam's or some place like that, and often save some money. You can also see about connecting with home gardeners. If you go to church or synagogue or a community center where you're interacting with a lot of other people in your area, find out who the home gardeners are. Most of us end up having way more of certain things than we could possibly ever hope to eat. But the food banks a lot of times don't want to take just a little bit of fresh produce from, Jim Bob's garden. They will get leftovers or excess from the grocery stores and places like that. So food banks obviously may have some fresh food, but also ask around, connect with local gardeners. If you do go to church or synagogue, consider having a bulletin board where farmers or gardeners can post when they've got extra stuff, and maybe once a month or once a week have a time where everybody brings in their excess produce and they can share. You can have a little swap meet of sorts. To improve not so healthy foods, for frozen pizza, you can top it with tomato paste, seasoning, and veggies. I generally make a very Chicago style pizza when I do this, and it does add a lot of nutrition to it. Pizza gets a bad rap. Macaroni and cheese. This is the penultimate broke food, as Bill Engvall would say. And when I'm talking about mac and cheese, I'm talking about those little 60-cent boxes with the powdered cheese in it. That is not the healthiest thing in the world, but it's a good place to start if you really are tight on money. You can add vegetables, make it with milk, makes it a little bit healthier. Peanut butter and jelly. Consider swapping out the jelly for sliced bananas or raisins. With grilled cheese, add apple slices to the side. That way you've got your cheese, you've got your bread, and the apples, which are green. Try to have fiber, protein, and a bit of fat, and don't go overboard, in each meal, which helps slow the absorption of the carbohydrates so your blood sugar doesn't spike. That helps a lot with insulin resistance. Ideally, now this is ideal, avoid anything with high fructose corn syrup, trans fats, and nitrites or nitrates. All of those have been found to contribute to health problems and inflammation in the body. Also, ideally, avoid anything that's like super processed, your white bread, your white flours. If you're eating on a budget, that may not be very realistic, but do what you can. Drink water with lemon juice instead of soda. That's cheaper. And try to wean off sugar and sweeteners. Now, I am, guilty of having too much sweetener, but I've gotten to the place where I can take a packet of generic, drink mix, and when it's supposed to make a 2 liters, I can make a gallon, and then I just put a half a cup of lemon juice in it. So I'm not getting as much sweetener, but I'm still getting a lot of flavor. It takes a minute to get used to the slightly different taste, but as Americans, we tend to eat way too much sugar and way too much artificial sweetener. So if you can find ways to back off of that, that's also healthy for your body. Like I said, the main focus of today's presentation was to give you some ideas about how to eat healthfully on a budget. And that on a budget is where it can be really challenging, especially when you're thinking about meats and dairies. Those tend to be harder. Your animal products tend to be much harder to find on sale or on a budget. Keep your eyes out. You can find sales that happen occasionally with meats. You just have to be more aware. Are there any questions about healthy eating on a budget? I had mentioned Starwest-Botanicals, and this is a place that I go for mine. You may not like it, but I have had really good luck getting a lot of our herbs and spices from Starwest-Botanicals. That's where I get my oregano, my cumin, and etc. Because they do tend to sell in bulk, and they do tend to be very affordable. I hope some of these tips were helpful. If you work in a church or synagogue or community center or treatment center, and this is an issue for the people that you work with. One of the things that can be really fun or empowering, I don't know how you want to look at it, is to have each person in the group go online or go into the recipe books and find an inexpensive meal. Preferably, one that's maybe 1 week you can say, okay, I want everybody to bring back a recipe that you like that uses beans as a main course. And then the next week do lentils as the main course. So people start developing a library of affordable recipes that are available to them. Everybody, have a great day, and I will see you same time, same station tomorrow.